Well, looky here. It's the Free for All after party. We're back in the podcast realm. Mike Doocy with Sam Gannon. We host Free for All 6 nights a week. The show airs at 10:30 most nights, 10 o'clock on Sunday nights. But this is the podcast world that Sam is so familiar with and so into and has so wanted to do for so long. So we're back. I'm going to turn it over to you for the rest of the half hour. Sam?
No, I'm very excited. I know there's a lot of viewers that have been asking, where has the podcast been
A lot
gone?
of viewers, really?
Yeah, they
Okay,
have. They've been
okay.
in my DMs. Maybe not
Oh,
yours, but they've
yeah.
been in mine.
I have a feeling a lot more people are in your DMs than mine, but yeah, go ahead.
No, I love doing this because I think it shows a different side of us that we don't always get to show on Free for All. We get to show it to a certain extent, but this is just fun for me because it's an addition to what we already do. And we love Free for All.
It's funny because my daughters are both really into podcasts.
Mhm.
And, you know, my older daughter, Christina, is about your age and Laura's a little bit younger. And so they've sort of dragged me kicking and screaming into that world a little bit. So there's a few that I listen to on a fairly regular basis. It's still not a routine for me, though, like I think it is for you.
Mhm.
That's why it hasn't really been top of mind for me. But I think for what we do for a living and what we talk about on our show, it does give us another outlet to talk about sports topics or maybe other stuff too, stuff that we talk about during breaks that we don't talk about on TV.
It's not always PG with us, but we keep it that way on television.
Like today, for example. Let's jump right into
Okay.
today.
Yeah, let's talk
Pulling
about
back the curtain just a little bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Joel Klatt, noted college football analyst for Fox.
Extraordinaire.
One of the big names in sports television,
Mhm.
certainly in college football. Thank God he's with Fox. He's great. He does a segment with us weekly on Free For All. We recorded it Wednesday at noon, whatever. So we're in there recording it in our main studio, and another studio is being built right next door for a soon-to-be debuting Fox 4 show. So, listener, you should have seen the look on my co-host's face. As we're doing our segment with Joel, we're recording it. It's going swimmingly, and all of a sudden you hear they're building this set next door while we're doing, for all they knew, live television. It didn't happen to be live. So we took a little break, and Sam, I thought you'd gone over and read him the riot act, but I guess you just went and closed the door.
You know, Deuce, what people don't realize about me is I have almost like a dual personality. I think most people who meet me look at me and think, oh, Sam's so sweet. She's always happy. She's always smiling. And there's two things that can be true. Two things can be true. I am that way. But when I've been pressed to a certain level, and it just kind of put me over the edge today with that one, especially because of how much I revere Joel Klatt. I don't want to be wasting his time. And we had to pause the segment. And I went to shut the doors. He was understanding, of course. I wasn't too happy.
No, Joel was very cool about it, but steam out of the ears, Sam
Steamy
came
Sammy.
to
Maybe that's a new
came to
one.
visit for just a minute there. Real quick, since we're on Joel Klatt, and we're going to talk a lot about the Cowboys. That's what most of this thing is going to be about. But you worked last weekend, so you were paying pretty close attention to college football.
Mm-hmm.
And Joel told us basically that he's going to be disappointed and that Texas fans should be disappointed if the Longhorns are not in the national championship game. That's how much he expects from them.
Yeah, I mean, he talked a lot about, even in the segment with us, praising the culture, how this is a team ready to win now. And it's hard to dispute that, right? When you see what they have coming back, but also they went to the college football playoff, lost in the semifinal game. Quinn Ewers, he said he was very high on him, said he was one of the best QBs in the country. And then, of course, you have Arch Manning. My favorite part of the game last week, when I was watching on TV, at least it sounded this way from a viewer's perspective. One of the loudest moments in the game came when Arch Manning entered the game in that third quarter. I mean, it's hard not to be excited even beyond Quinn Ewers when you have a guy like him, the family name, all of it, and what he's going to be able to bring as well. So in terms of the quarterback situation, I think the Longhorns are in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, it's funny because Joel kind of downplayed the Arch thing when we asked him about it.
Yeah, he did.
But it's something Sark has to deal with because there's a little bit of pressure on Sarkisian to make Manning some part of this at some point, I think. Although if they're rolling in every game, and they're favored to win at Michigan. I mean, talk about what a difference a year can make. Michigan wins a national championship, and now all the pressure's on Texas going to play at Michigan in that opening game. All right. Speaking of pressure, I was watching our name the artist.
I forget, but I know the song.
Queen.
Okay.
Name the lead singer for Queen.
Freddie Mercury.
Yeah. Pressure. Watching FS1, one of their panel shows, the banner on the screen said, "Is this game, the Cleveland game, a must-win for the Cowboys?"
Isn't it unreal? I feel like every network, whenever they can find a way to either lead with the Cowboys or draw national attention to, they will, and they'll go to extreme with the headlines as well, right?
A must-win. Now, they still play 17, right? Did I miss that? So is this a must-win for the? I mean, I guess I know what they were getting at after a really lackluster off season and all the contract stuff, and they didn't fortify their roster, blah, blah, blah. What's the fan base going to do if they lose the opener? I think they're going to lose the opener. I'm picking Cleveland in the game. I think you're picking Dallas to win. But I think we both agree it's going to be a close, probably kind of defensive slugfest type game. But, man, the pressure is always intense on this team. But as much as they've underperformed in the postseason, including last year, as little as they did in the offseason, coach doesn't have an extension. Quarterback, as we record this, does not have a contract extension. All of those weird storylines going on. Man, if they get off to a rough start, it could get ugly around here.
Yeah, is it a must win? No, but should they win? Absolutely, because you always want to start the season on that kind of good note, because we've taken a look at the schedule. The beginning part of their schedule for the whole year is tough, but you certainly don't want to be in a situation where, I don't think they're going to lose against the Saints in week 2, but you would hate to be in a situation even starting off where you're 1-3 or 1-4. And I do think, as much as Dak and everyone says they try not to pay attention to headlines, I do think some of this stuff is distracting. I do. I think it's gotten to the point, because of how they've underperformed in the playoffs, where we're talking about the same things every year for the last, 3 to 4 years. How is that not a distraction? And so from a mental standpoint with some of these guys, do I think Dak handles pressure well? On one hand, you could say sure, but if you look at the results in the postseason, the answer is no, right?
Absolutely. He was terrible in that playoff game. There's no two ways about it. I think he handles the noise pretty well, but I think you could argue that when the games are the most important, he has struggled, and that's why he doesn't have a contract right now. Is I think Jerry is making him sweat it out. Although I still think they're going to get one done here in fairly short order. It's funny you talk about distractions. There was a moment at training camp the second time I went out the last week where we were standing around Zach Martin after practice, and somebody asked him about dealing with the noise, with dealing with the distractions. How have you done it all these years? And he started to answer, and then everybody ran away. And he said, "What's going on?" And somebody said, "Oh, Jerry's talking over here."
We don't care about you anymore.
So it was like a perfect example of what they have to deal with. And it's not quite like this for any other franchise. But it's amazing how, in spite of the fact that they've not had any postseason success, how relevant they remain, because they've been pretty good in a lot of regular seasons. And there have always been a ton of storylines, and that's a perfect example of the way this year is shaping up.
A couple of things. There was a story or headline on our Fox Forward Instagram account saying that by social media description or accounts that the Chiefs have now surpassed the Cowboys as the most I don't know if I believe that for 1 second. I don't. Maybe more people dislike the Chiefs than they have in the past because of how much they've won. I don't think they've surpassed the Cowboys in the amount of hatred that this franchise here gets. I don't think so at all.
Does anybody really hate Patrick Mahomes? I mean, what am I missing there? I think
Travis
the Kelsey Taylor
factor.
Swift thing has probably brought some negativity on to it there, but yeah. I mean, especially for people like you who don't like
Oh,
Taylor Swift.
Wait a second. Before Mike loves to pin me in a corner of what I like, or he also thinks that I hope Mike McCarthy fails. I don't. He literally, Coach, if you ever for some reason listen to this or watch, I do not want to see you fail. Of course, I would like to see him win. My whole point was, at what point is 12 wins in a season? All right, this fan base just going to be great. You guys did great in the regular season. You tanked. You absolutely tanked and failed in the playoffs. Does that suffice? I'm just wondering. So at what point, I know about Jason Garrett and what you're saying, but at what point is enough enough?
You know, it's hard to argue with what you're saying, but you would agree that McCarthy does pay for the sins of the coaches before him who have failed in the postseason, including Bill Parcells, who never won a playoff game here. I say that every chance I get. You overrated Bill Parcells.
Sean Payton, go ahead,
McCarthy
say that.
and Sean Payton are the same coach. Their record is almost identical. They've each won a Super Bowl. They each should have won more Super Bowls with the quarterbacks they had at their disposal. Didn't get it done. But it's going to be a tough decision for Jerry if they win 10, 11, 12 games, go to the playoffs. Let's say they lose a first-round game that's not like last year. You know, a hard-fought game, a close game that just, turns on one play. It's not necessarily his team being as obviously non-prepared, unprepared as they were last year. Maybe it's a different type of game. I still think it's tough for Jerry to let him go, although I think he would, because I think
now it's back.
I think he wants Dak back, but I don't think he's necessarily holding this contract off to put more pressure on Dak, but I absolutely think he is to put more pressure on McCarthy.
Don't you think it's weird, though, too? My whole thing is if they weren't going to eventually get Dak a new extension, the way Jerry and Stephen Jones have quadrupled down on the fact that Prescott is going to be the quarterback at the future, that's a bad look if they don't get it done. I'm sorry, it is. Then don't come out and say it multiple times that Dak's our guy. Don't say it. That's my thing.
Sometimes I think it's more complicated than Jerry just wanting to keep the story alive.
Yeah,
I mean, and with Lamb too. I mean, they obviously were close for months on a deal with him, but he let it go through training camp and it gave us something to talk about. And maybe the Dak thing is the same way. What they have to be careful of is, say the Cowboys brain trust really does want this to happen. They really want Dak back. They have to be careful not to piss Dak off to the point where he finally says once the games start, no, talks are off. And then after the season is over, there's a more appealing situation for him, right? And I have a hard time thinking there would be one realistically. But, it's possible. Maybe he wants to go home and play for the Saints after this year. Who knows?
And I do think, to your point, I do think he wants to be here. And when you talk about the situation of Hall of Fame quarterbacks like a Troy Aikman, all of these guys who used to play for the Cowboys, they're still here because there's so many great business ventures that come from
great opportunities
playing for the Cowboys. But I do think Dak is getting a little bit more annoyed. We've heard him say some things now throughout training camp that he hasn't in the past said. Maybe he just feels, I had Mac Engel of the Star Telegram on saying, I think he just feels more confident in what he brings or whatever it is. But Dak said if a deal doesn't get done before this Cleveland Browns season opener, it says a lot. If it does or doesn't get done, it says a lot about how people feel, which he's pointing to Jerry. Of course, he didn't say that, but that's what he's talking about. So, maybe Dak goes and wins an MVP this year. Who knows? I think that's still far-fetched to say that's going to happen, but he did have a great year last year, statistically, individually, but in terms of the team success, it was a fail at the end of the day.
It was. It was also interesting when Dak said he stopped listening to Jerry and the media a long time ago. Yeah. I thought that was a great line too. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't talking and aren't still having productive discussions, and it might not still happen. Just to reset, let's do a little reset here for the listener that might be that isn't how it works on a podcast, though.
Sure, listener.
Could they just be tuning in right now?
Of course.
They might have skipped ahead because they were bored by something else, and now they're not sure. We're doing a free-for-all after party, whatever calling it this time around. Doocy with Gannon here from the Free For All show.
Wait, can we talk about just for a second how fun it was, though, to be at training camp together for the first time in basically 6 years,
so
5 years?
Assuming that it was fun? Yeah, go ahead. What people don't realize how much work it is, though, first of all, right? I mean, it's long days.
The days are, I always like to say that this time of year with the NFL season, it's calculated chaos, organized chaos in the sense of we know what is coming every single week, but there's a lot of moving parts. And those training camp days, and you were out there solo for a good chunk of it. They're long days. They're fun days, but there's a lot going on out there.
No, it's a great time. And people back here get tired of us talking about how great the weather is out there, but it is just perfect. Mid-70s every day. We stay in Ventura, which is a cool little, beach town. And
Mike and I took a couple
got
morning
some
walks.
Access there along the boardwalk or whatever. But yeah, it's a deal where you're there late morning Pacific time and working until, our late show at night. But it's a type of access to the process that you don't often get. And I'm not sure every media group gets with every team. I think the Cowboys still open it up more than most, right?
I agree.
But no, it was fun being out there and doing the show, the whole show out there for a good week. And
looked good.
Jeff did a great job for a couple of weeks, and then I went back and tried to handle things best I could by myself.
I went to Spain instead.
Yeah, you went to Spain.
Sorry, I had to live my life a little.
You loved that too, didn't you?
I did.
Game changer, life changer.
People say, like my mom keeps saying, well, that's how everyone feels, Sam, after a vacation. I said, Mom, no, this isn't like going to Cape Cod in Massachusetts. I love Cape Cod, okay? My family goes there every year, but I've only been overseas one other time, and that was to Germany. And I'm telling you, the way people live out in Spain, it is completely different from here. Completely. No one is on their phones. You go out to dinner, not a phone in sight. It's just people enjoying each other's presence. We could learn something from them. That's all I'm saying.
Did you bring some of that back with you, or did the bitterness and disappointment of your life here in the U.S. soon return?
No, you know what? I am going to try. Mike knows this about me. I can be very happy, but I'm also a little high strung. I get stressed out. You've seen me.
It happens.
Yeah,
we each have our own ways of being high strung.
I just think I'm going to try to not let things bother me as much and try to not lose the magic of the trip, because there was a lot of magic there. It sounds silly, but no, I think it's important to see how different cultures live. I think if you ever have an opportunity, if there's young people listening, if you ever have an opportunity to live somewhere other than where you're from, I absolutely think you should do it, because it broadens your perspective. And I think we need that more than ever now, especially in today's society.
The fun little trip I took when you were in Spain ended up being more fun than I thought it would. Photojournalist Chris Hanks and I drove from Southern California to Vegas for the preseason game.
And how was that?
I was told, it's just across the desert and, but it was beautiful. I mean, there's almost always mountains in your view on this road. It's interstate highway all the way. And I'd only been to Vegas once before in my life, and that was like 35 years ago. That's really random that I hadn't been there more often than that. But we had a good time. Didn't really do any gambling or anything.
You didn't take in the late night scene that is Vegas.
No, I didn't catch any shows, but we did our show on the Strip one night on this pedestrian bridge, and there were showgirls walking by as we're doing it with their rear ends hanging out.
I know you weren't looking in their direction.
Not at
you were
all.
Being respectful.
I had my blinders on, but it timed out. You could say perfectly or not perfectly. It was like every time we'd go to video or a commercial, they would walk by. So they were never in our shot. But Hanks and his wife, who was there, were pointing and back. So it's a scene unlike any other. So that's my my Vegas story. You want to talk a little more football before we wrap up?
Sure.
Just a little more?
Yeah.
Running backs for the Cowboys. Who's going to be the leading rusher for the Cowboys this year? Go.
We talked about this on Free For All the other night. I'm going to say Rico Dowdle. I think he's the sleeper in all of this. I mean, every year, I think with this team, there's usually a player or two that comes out of the wings and surprises some people. Last year, one of those players was Deron Bland. He's going to miss several weeks. But I think Rico Dowdle's been working hard. He's also been working on his passing routes too. I think he wants to be a complete back. This is running back by committee, but I'm going to go and say that it's going to be Rico.
I agree, but I think Zeke might be a little better than people are assuming he'll be. I think it's possible he has one last gasp in him in his career, and if used in the right situations, could really provide some help and be productive in obviously short yardage situations, goal line situations, and he is still a good blocker. Who do you like in this game? Give your prediction and give a score.
You're putting me on the spot with the score. They're like a 2.5 point underdog.
Dallas is, yeah.
Yes, I'm going to go Cowboys. I'm going to say, give me Cowboys 27-21.
Okay, all right. I've got a similar score, but I've got Cleveland 24-20.
Okay.
24-20. I'm anxious to see how the kid Guyton, the left tackle, holds up against Myles Garrett and a really good Cleveland defense. We'll see if Dak's running for his life a little bit in this game. We'll see if CeeDee Lamb
has any rust.
Hits the ground, running, or if there's some timing issues because he missed much of training camp. We also gave our season record predictions, and yours is a little surprisingly more optimistic than mine. Did you say 11 wins?
I said 11 wins. Yeah, 11-6.
And I said 10,
which is close.
Do you think? Is it too early to predict playoffs?
Yeah, we're not going there yet.
Okay.
Because we didn't do it on our show yet.
You're right. We didn't.
When are we going to do that on our show?
I don't know. Let's wait till right before the playoffs to make that prediction.
Mike's prediction went on a billboard last year that the Cowboys were going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You forgot about that, didn't you?
Last time I remember going to get a billboard.
That's not true.
I got a billboard right when I was hired here, Sam, back in 1994. Let me tell you some of the stories about the old days. I know how much you enjoy those. No, here's a billboard story for you. Okay. The all-time billboard story for me. When I was working in Iowa before I came here, we were in the market where the Hawkeyes played. We were Cedar Rapids, Iowa City. And our station was like the Hawkeye station. We had the coaches show and all that. And so the main sports guy always had a billboard with his face on it in the north end zone of Kinnick Stadium where the Hawkeyes play. So there was my mug right there.
Your big head?
And my big head, actual size on the billboard. But my last night at Channel 2 in Cedar Rapids, I drove home, pulled into the garage, and there, sitting up against the wall of the garage, was that billboard. The guy from the billboard company was one of my neighbors and had taken it down that day and gave it to me.
Full-size billboard?
So now it hangs right above our bed at home.
Wait,
in
do you
Carrollton.
still have it?
No.
What did you do with it?
I don't know we had it for a long time. I'm not sure.
Kept that.
I made my wife mad one time and she defaced it or something. I don't remember what happened.
What did you do? What did you do with the big picturesque 30th anniversary? Remember that? There was that big poster.
It's beautiful. It was really well done. That's on the floor of my office, rolled up still. But I'm trying to decide.
As long as you have it.
I do still.
Do
have
not
it.
get rid of that.
That was really nice. We'll have to tell the listeners about that.
Yeah, we'll at another
some other time. Because look, we're out of time already.
We're out of time, but we're back. Happy to be back. It's only taken like 2 years to bring this back, but
it's amazing how quickly 23 minutes and 40 seconds can go. We'll see you next time, everybody.
See y'all.
Bye.